I'd like to see Mrs. Stoddard, if you'd be so kind.
Mrs. Stoddard?
This is Collinwood, isn't it?
Yes.
And the mistress here is Mrs. Elizabeth Collins Stoddard, is she not?
Yes.
Then perhaps you'd do me the courtesy to inform Mrs. Stoddard that her cousin is calling and wishes to pay his respects. Oh, madam, if you would, you may tell her that it's Barnabas Collins.
Night falls at Collinwood. Meanwhile, in South Florida, the date is March 19th, 1988, 2 weeks before my 16th birthday, and I heard one of my TV heroes was coming to town. The reluctant vampire himself as he played on television, Jonathan Frid from Dark Shadows. Being a young, fearless, and somewhat callow fellow, I called Jonathan's manager early in the morning. As soon as I read in the paper he'd be in town. Within a few minutes, that incredible baritone voice said, "Hello, this is Jonathan Frid." I said, "Mr. Frid, my name is TJ Lubinsky, and I would love to talk to you about your experience on Dark Shadows." He said, "Sure, come on by." So my TV production friends and I quickly traveled down the road to Fort Lauderdale from Coral Springs to do what would be my very first television interview. Well, home video. Very home video. It was before we learned our craft. It was even before I learned how to phrase great questions. Totally ad-libbed. For the first time in 26 years, I finally found this tape which I thought was lost forever. The culmination of a childhood dream. The day I met Jonathan Frid.
Who is Barnabas Collins?
Well, he's a vampire, which I don't like to think of him as particularly. I like to think of him as a complex person.
Whatever that may turn out to be.
Not to dismiss the vampire aspect, because that is always the threat behind anything he does. That's what makes him a dangerous man, and there's nothing more interesting in drama than a dangerous, or a person that has the capability of being a dangerous person. So, hence, the fact that once you accept this premise that a vampire can exist, but then that's theater, that's make-believe, that's pretend time, and we pretend that vampires exist, right? And so having accepted that, yes, he's a vampire. That's what makes him always attractive, compelling, not appealing, but compelling, no matter what he does, because he may go off for the deep end, as it were. So I guess that's who Barnabas Collins is. He's the vampire, and I've never said that before, at least I've been admitted to saying it. But however, my attitude about the show, by the way, keeps changing all the time. There were times I wouldn't even use that word. At the time, when I was doing the show, I hated every minute of it. It was strictly from my own point of view. I hated my own work in it. Because I'm a slow study, and I never perfected the role. Hone it and perfect it and make it right each day is what you can't do when you're getting new scripts every day.
And of course,
I had no trouble with Barnabas. I knew Barnabas before I even started. I knew what I was going to do with it. But how to perfect it, how to make it work effectively each day without going around looking campy half the time, which I never intended to be. You see, to me it's always an insult when people say it's campy, because I meant to be very serious. I was very serious about Barnabas. He was as if I was doing Hamlet. And indeed, he became a very complex person. So, but if I went around looking kind of, lugubrious, it was because I didn't know where I was going most of the time. I was kind of walking in a fog. It helped. It helped to establish the character. I can't argue that. But it was not the character I really wanted the people to see. Sometimes it did work. Sometimes, indeed, it did work. There were days when I was really quite good, but they're far and few between.
It's uncanny.
What is?
But that portrait over there, have you seen it?
Yes. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, if it weren't for the clothes, well, forgive me for staring, but for the moment it seems as though I'd seen a
Ghost?
The weekend before I did my first show, they called me over to the studio, and I thought I was being canned already. I mean, what's this all about? Because the studio's closed on Saturday. I went over there, and they had the writers, one of the producers, the associate producer, the writers, the head writers, directors, all sitting on this conference table, and they were waiting for me. And I thought, God, what is this? Some sort of interrogation. And it turned out they wanted to talk to me about this character. Apparently this character was very important to the show. The show was on, whatever they call it, you know, when the show
was in the midst of...
going on or off the air. And they needed a new character, and Dan Carson said they needed a monster who might do the trick. Well, indeed they did. But what came out of this conference, what they wanted to talk to me, the actor, about the role. Well, I said just pretty much what I'm saying to you now. I mean, what do you do? The first thing you learn the script, you say the lines, and it'll come to you eventually. Is what you're doing. But anyway, they wanted to get some bigger idea about it. It was some more concrete idea about it. I'd never heard of this ever being done before. So we sat there, and then I realized years later, actually, but one of the writers had gone to Yale with me, and he'd been in shows I did up there, and he knew me for the villains that I used to play, and how I was played against the villainy. So I think that's why they cast me. Anyway, we decided that day not to go against the monster as much as possible. I mean, what I mean by going against the monster, playing other aspects, give him other character traits.
Nighttime in itself can be lonely.
I suppose so.
But then one gets used to loneliness.
You shouldn't get into character traits the first day, but however, they wanted to get a view because they had 3 or 4 or 5 writers, and they had to have some idea. So they really put the cart before the horse that day. They started talking about the character before I'd even done any episodes. However, I went merrily ahead and paid no attention after that meeting, and just learning my lines and not bumping into furniture and not getting out of camera range. That's what I did for about the first year, in fact. And it was only after the first year where I really got more comfortable and began to, well, be a little bit more sophisticated with the playing of it.
This is a terrible nightmare. I'm imagining it.
No, you are not, Father.
Then, you live?
Yes.
Then why didn't you come to me? I don't understand.
Don't try, Father.
Go back to your own life. Forget you ever saw me.
What helped Barnabas become a reality is that Barnabas, of course, when you think of the premise, if you accept this ridiculous thing that he comes out of a coffin 150 years later, and he zaps Willie right off the bat. And so he's therefore accused of being a homosexual vampire. But anyway, he goes out, he has to get blood from something, and there's Willie, very handily there. I'm pretty philosophical about death. I mean, I've had lots of friends die. My mother died last year. My brother died just a few months before her. An aunt of mine just died 2 or 3 months after mother. All of them the last year. My mother, of course, was 98, and my aunt was 900. So, in a sense, I felt rather happy about it all because maybe I have a long life. No, I'm not terribly distressed by death. I mean, my memories of them are still there. For all I know, I may never have seen Grayson Hall again in my life anyway. You know, actors are constantly moving on, and I've known hundreds of actors and have been very intimately working and socializing with them that have gone out of my life, and I've been to them in years and years and years and years. So they all die. You all die together when the show ends. So death is something for me anyway. I don't know if there's something missing in me or not, but I never get very upset with death, with people dying. I kind of envy them in a way. I mean, not that I'm suicidal, but I mean, I think that, you know, they're happy. I mean, they're happy to blank. I believe death is death. That there's no, I don't believe in afterlife. I believe that you do what you do on this earth, and you've got your peace. Indeed, you have peace because you're asleep. It's a sleep. It's a deep, deep sleep without dreams. Just deep sleep. That's all it is. Period. So what's so sad about that?
I wanted you dead.
And I began to choke. I couldn't breathe.
When I saw you suffering, I knew I couldn't let you die.
It's the way you get to death is the thing that always scares me. And I feel dreadful for people that have to suffer with cancer or AIDS or age, as my mother did. I mean, I felt more sorry for her in her last 3 years than I did for her death.
Because it was over. It was final.
It was final.
Yeah.
Sure. So, no, as far as feeling for these people that I knew in Dark Shadows, I was certainly felt for them or felt about them, and you know, oh, I was, you know, but I mean, not. No, and they had good lives, as far as I know. Some of them had troublesome lives, but they, you know, they're dead, they're gone, period. And we're all going to be gone. I mean, most of the people that I've known in my life are dead now. I'm getting into that age now where I'm making new friends because all the friends are going. For an old woman who's got a cane, it's more than that. It's you're with a cane and without anybody else of your contemporaries with you, pretty much.
You did this to me. You.
No.
You turned me into something so grotesque that anyone who looks at me would fear me and loathe me.
Barnabas.
Is this your revenge?
Revenge? For what?
For refusing to let our relationship become all that you hoped it would be.
That's ridiculous.
Then why did it happen?
Well, I warned you against taking the massive dosage. You let me progress at my own rate of speed with proper controls.
The same thing would have happened.
Not necessarily.
Forgive me, Doctor, but I no longer have any faith in your ability.
You don't let it go to your head.
Oh, I guess it did a little. Actually, no, I don't think it did. I don't know. Who knows? I think everybody just gets a little heady at times. I imagine you're capable of getting pretty heady yourself.
Myself, I am.
Anyway.
Very much so.
Yeah, sure. But one of the reasons I couldn't let too much of this go to my head at the time because I was so damn busy every day with these scripts. And I go off on these junkets for the weekend to pick up a couple of grand, you know, for tours, you know, shopping centers and so on, promotional things. And you get heady from those experiences. But by Sunday night, I was selected. I'd be there and I'd be doing something on a Saturday. And sometimes on Sunday, I guess, sure. And anyway, as soon as it was over, I had a script for Monday morning. And I shouldn't have done those things because they're tiring. And however heady the experience it was, I was usually the stupidest actor on Monday morning at the studio.
Ahead a blazing light does burn, and one door leads to the point of return. The point of return, Barnabas. The point of return. 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 The point of return.
Dark Shadows is in the past. I like what you said at the beginning of this some time ago, when you felt that it was, I've forgotten how you put it, but you said it in a very intriguing way, that it had a very special quality to a lot of people in the country. It had a genuine quality, that unique thing that no other thing in the business has or had, whatever. And I'm glad you said it, because I have to be reminded of that sometimes. Maybe there is something about Dark Shadows that escapes me still in that sense.
typecast?
Well, no, I can answer that one right now. No, I don't feel typecast at all, because it's a matter of semantics. What I call typecasting are the Robert Redfords of this world who play just themselves all the time. And I like to use that example of Clark Gable, who wouldn't do a southern accent in Gone with the Wind because it would disturb his persona. He was playing Clark Gable. He always played Clark Gable. Rhett Butler was Clark Gable, is what Rhett Butler was. But that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just that kind of theater, that kind of acting. And they were very good at it. I mean, Robert Redford's wonderful in what he does. So is Clark Gable. They're very efficient. But they don't stretch. They don't play other people. They make the character come to them. And there's sort of ego trips in a way. But of course, I know what actor isn't he? But I was at that British school, sort of, where I stretched, went out to play other people, because I don't know who I am. Somebody asked, started off the interview one day with a question, something like yours, only there was who is Jonathan Frid?
Well, you would be an actor if you know.
Who is Jonathan, whatever. But I mean, I don't know who Jonathan Frid is. I mean, I know, my personality, I'm not really too, if I know it, I don't know how to use it. I'm not typecast. That's what made Barnabas so interesting.
Because he was never the same?
He was never the same. He had I mean, you think of it, he was a young hero at one point. He was an old man of 175 at another point. I mean, just to take the two extremes.
And you got your...
Then he played vulnerable, he played attacker, he played in love, he played unrequited love, he was picked on, he picked on people, he was menaced, he was frightened, he was everything. I mean, he was everything.
No! No!
No, by all means, get Dark Shadows on the air wherever you can.
Get
Bless
it around.
you.
Thank you for promoting me. That sounds
No, I mean, sort of cameras, all the cameras all been put away.
Cameras
Was it
have been
still
away.
going?
Oh, that one's still going.
No, one more time. Mr. Jonathan Frid.
In a way, you can compare the pyramids to this house. Both were built to support an ego and perpetuate a memory, but both merely survived as architectural feats.
But to me, this house has always been a reminder of the enterprise of the people who settled here.
Yes, in a way, you're right. The design and construction of this house represented a marriage of the elegance of Europe and the vigor and enterprise of the New World. The foundations were made from rocks left behind by glaciers thousands of years ago. The beams and supports were cut from ancient local forests. The plaster walls were made from crushed clamshells and horsehair. Bricks were imported from Holland. That dusty chandelier, brought over from France, gleamed with hypnotic brilliance. That faded wallpaper was especially designed by a Belgian artist. The parquet floors were installed by an Italian craftsman. Cornices and moldings were the effort of a Spanish craftsman. It was a house to be envied by a prince. But in spite of all this, the total effort was an agony to man. Men were driven to their limits. What should have been an act and labor of love became a hateful thing. There were the crippled and the dead.
And they always gave me the most convoluted sentences. They figure vampires can cope with convoluted sentences. That's the way they talk. I mean, how else does a vampire talk? With convoluted sentences. That's as far as their imaginations went with Barnabas.
Very serious, very...
Yeah, and very
articulate,
very articulate, and very... Yeah, not Joe Blow from the street, but somebody kind of halfway up on the trees somewhere, looking out over a castle window. Hello there, talking in lugubrious. So I would get these impossible things to say.
And
no one would ever say them. Well, except the vampire.
And the way it was put together. And it must, Mike, I mean,
For you, it was a job. I'm sure it was a little more than that. It was a job.
Well, it was sure. My ambition every day was to make it sound as real as I could possibly do under the circumstances. Thank you. You're very good.
Well, thank you.
You're only 16.
Actually, I'm 15. I'll be 16 in 2 weeks. A week today.